Hey there coworkers, it's Haz here and holidays are coming to Salmon Run, and while it won't be snowing or having fancy shiny ink colors, it very much is a Frosty Festival if you do care about some good rotations. This Salmon report will go through rotations from the 18th of December all the way to the 25th of December, and I will share my tips and quick hints for each weapon. For more Salmon Run guides and content, consider subscribing to the rest of the channel, but for now, let's dive in. As I said, I pretty much consider this week Frosty Festival for Salmon Run, as every single rotation is a great opportunity to reach EVP 999 in my opinion, and the weapon selections are amazing for each shift. The rotations will be Marooner's Bay with a Splash-O-Matic, Splatana Viper, Splattershot Pro and the Splat Charger, Sockeye Station with Aerospray, Splatbrella, H3 Nuzzle Nose and the Explusher, Spawning Grounds with Reflux 450, Splatana Stemper, Bloblubber and Gootuber, and special Christmas present on Gonefish and Hydroplant with Wildcard rotation and the Grizzco Slosher. All very good shifts I think, maybe Sockeye Station being the weakest, but if you have the time I recommend playing on all of these rotations as they will be a lot of fun, especially the Grizzco Slosher one. First rotation that is currently underway is on Marooner's Bay. I've already made a field survey about this map and the weapons that I do recommend checking out for practical tips and showing gameplay of all weapons. The Splash-O-Matic is overall a standard shooter, nothing too much to say about it in my opinion. It's average in everything and so you can react to wherever you are needed. But this rotation specifically I would recommend splatting as many lessers as you can and help out with painting. Remember, the Splash is a pretty low damage weapon, so don't mistake it for the Sploosh-O-Matic that can just dish out tons of damage in seconds. At the start of the rounds, paint both lift walls with a Splash on Marooner's Bay, as lots of splats can be attributed to those not being painted at all until it's way too late. The Splatana Viper on the other hand is one of my favorite weapons, as it's just really versatile, similarly like those generic shooters, but at the same time it's capable of being a powerful melee weapon, almost like a roller, and if needed have the range to deal with any of the pesky bosses. Your melee attacks can be charged very fast, and 2 consecutive hits will deal with most bosses except for a big shot, where you will need a bit more, but you're still one of the best DPS weapons in Salmon Run overall, and so it's also highly recommended to charge attack Kohazuna as much as you can. For waves like Glowfly Rush, when you are untargeted, I recommend standing sideways, perpendicular but close to the horde, as your melee hits will splat much more efficiently this way than if you would try to shoot from afar. Don't forget you also have pretty good range, so help out with steelheads and fiststicks if you're close by, and remember, with good aiming, you can shoot above hordes with your charged range attack and your wave will pierce through most targets without disappearing. These waves are also very efficient at taking out stingers as they destroy multiple of their pots instead of one by one. The Splattershot Pro is unfortunately a good example that range and damage isn't everything, and while it could be a great generic shooter, its fire rate and ink efficiency is terrible, so it's very easy to get overwhelmed with it if there's too many salmonids around you and in a bad position. Refill your ink tank as much as you can and try to stick to range similarly like a jet squelcher to weaken salmonids from afar before they get too close to you. Similarly to the Splash-O-Matic, help paint the lifts and wave starts to secure escape routes from the shores. The Splat Charger is your generic charger weapon. It has no specialties, so just remember the general tips for chargers like your full charge shots pierce through targets, so you're also very powerful against hordes if there's a lot of them grouped up, and take out those steelheads and big shots from afar, as it's really no effort for a charger, but will greatly help the whole team. When being overwhelmed, focus on taking out lesser salmonids as they are more dangerous to you than bosses and prevent you from refilling your tank, unlike bosses that you can just mostly kite. Second shift is on Sockeye Station, and overall this rotation has a pretty fun weapon combination as they range from very short range all the way to long range anchors. The Splatbrella is the most technical weapon to learn here, but it's also one of the most versatile weapons you can learn for Salmon Run overall. And then the Explusher is the icing on the cake, but we'll talk about these later. First, the Aerospray. It's a very short range but fast firing weapon. Its DPS is often exaggerated as it's relatively a weak shooter and it won't be splatting any of the high health bosses fast, so instead I recommend aggressively moving around the map, filtering lesser salmonids and splatting easy to hit mobile bosses. Thanks to its mobility, the Aerospray is probably the most suited for carrying far eggs back to the basket, as your excellent painting will let you maneuver around hordes with ease. The Splatbrella, as I said, is a very versatile weapon too, and also the best Brella you can get in Salmon Run. Its normal burst fire is good DPS and has decent range that makes splatting bosses very easy. But from all the salmonids, you excel the most against stingers as Brellas hit multiple of their pots with a single shot. The reason the Splat Brella is versatile is that while you shoot relatively slow, you have the Brella canopy that most players just forget to use. Opening your canopy and colliding with enemies actually deals damage, and this damage is enough to splat both chums and small fry, so while your normal shots handle large health targets well, for weaker enemies all you have to do is practice and learn opening your canopy to support you while also shooting. Additionally, your canopy is also a defensive tool that protects you from all attacks, including steelhead bombs or flyfish missiles. The H3 Nuzzle Nose is just an underwhelming shooter in Salmon Run in my opinion. It has good range and very good damage, but it is a burst firing weapon with huge gaps between its shots that just takes away all the advantage it would otherwise have. Fire rate is one of the most important weapon attributes in Salmon Run, mostly to take care of hordes and to one-cycle certain bosses. To counter it, you can practice shooting with the H3 and also turning left and right very fast so that your shots spread, but overall it's not really going to fix your fire rate. The H3 unfortunately is pretty much the worst shooter you can get, and I recommend sticking to range with it and try to keep a clean area around yourself, which is the reason I would call it a basket defender, where it performs the best, almost like a heavy splatling. Then the Explosher. A lot of players favor it simply for the one reason that this slosher's attacks are treated like a splat bomb, and so you can shoot into flyfish launchers to splat them without having to use your ink on a grenade. This aspect alone makes it a very good freelance weapon, as a lot of groups struggle taking care of flyfish fast. This ability also transfers onto Mudmouth waves to handle those special rounds without a problem and score some really high amount of golden eggs, great for overfishing. Apart from that, while I love the blast radius and the painting of the Explosher, as it can paint flipper floppers very fast or paint walls instantly at the start of waves, once you learn to handle flyfish, the magic of Explosher somewhat disappears and makes you realize it's a relatively sluggish and low DPS weapon that heavily relies on high ground positioning to make use of its AoE against hordes. For this reason on Sockeye, I recommend sticking to the tower to help you utilize its AoE shots to the maximum and to deal the most damage to salmonids. If you find yourself in trouble, instead of running to safety, keep jumping and painting under yourself, as it will be a lot more efficient to create distance between you and the enemy. And so we arrive to the third shift, and by far my favorite rotation of this week on Spawning Grounds. I'm fairly sure I'll go EVP 999 on this stage now. This is a super fun rotation to do so and get your golden badge. Except for the Gootuber, all three other weapons are fantastic, with the Reflux being the most technical probably, but it's really easy to learn how to play it. So the Reflux is often misplayed, as I see players either just spamming normal tap shots and miss 2 out of their 3 arrows constantly, or waste time charging their shots to maximum all the time. While full charges are great to take care of some targets like steelheads and drizzlers from afar, you do much more damage if you only charge your weapon to the first stage and keep shooting partial charges. In fact, the Reflux is among the top 10 most consistent damage dealers thanks to its utility and its good ink efficiency. You can still use tap shots to paint mostly, but even against lessers, I recommend partial charges, otherwise you will just keep missing your arrows going to the sides. The Splatana's Temper plays very similarly to the Viper we talked earlier. It's a very versatile weapon, also deals bonus damage with each hit in melee, but it's even stronger than the Viper. The Stamper is basically the slower but heavy-hitting version of the Splatana's, and instead of playing very aggressively and mobile, I recommend choosing your targets carefully and go for those clean picks to splat salmonid bosses, as your charges take a bit longer, which leaves you vulnerable. Your charged melee attacks destroy big shots, so they should be your #1 priority when they spawn, except if it's the last 20 seconds or so. And also during Extra Wave, keep charge attacking Kohazuna in melee and you'll see some huge burst damage against them. Despite being a bit slower, you still very much can use your ranged attacks to take care of steelheads, stingers, fish sticks without a problem. The Bloblubber is simply amazing. It's a weapon that has everything and without any weakness. This slosher has amazing range, incredibly good damage per projectile, can arc its shots to splat slaminlets from the ground, and your ink efficiency is also pretty good. It's one of the best weapons you can get in Salmon Run, as it excels against all salmonids. Your range and damage can split all bosses without a problem, and since you shoot multiple bubbles at the same time, you can also splat stingers very fast. Not to mention, it's the perfect tool to take care of lesser salmonid hordes in front of you in no time. These very same bubbles also make Glowfly Rush Wave a joke, so this rotation also has that pretty much covered. Since it's a versatile weapon, play aggressively and help wherever it's needed. I recommend practicing this weapon a lot as it has very high carry potential, but there really isn't much to say about it. It's easy and incredibly strong. Last, the black sheep of this rotation, the Gootuber. Well, if you get it, you will pretty much be carried by the rest of the team as the Gootuber really doesn't bring much to the table and is probably the weakest charger anyway. Fortunately, it still has the average attributes of a charger, so your full charges pierce through targets that is very useful against hordes, though with a Bloblubber and a Stamper, there really shouldn't be any lessers on the stage. Instead, make use of your range and powerful shots and take care of those steelheads closing in on the basket. That's probably the most useful thing you can do really. And also maybe hitting those Drizzler torpedoes and helping taking out Drizzlers themselves. The Gootuber's specialty is that it can hold its charge while swimming. But honestly, this gimmick is just not useful for Salmon Run, or rather not for this weapon specifically, and you just won't be using it that much. For the final rotation of the week and for Christmas, we're getting a special Grizzco Wildcard rotation, and as I've already talked about it, the Grizzco Slosher is finally making a debut, one of the most broken weapons of Salmon Run. The stage will be Gonefish and Hydroplant that will further enhance the usefulness of the Slosher, as you will have very clear high ground to just splat anything you see, and despite it being a random rotation, just the Slosher makes it a good candidate to go for EVP 999, similarly like the Grizzco's Patana shift was. This Slosher also pierces through every single armor, so Scrappers, Flipper Floppers, Steelheads, Flyfish, Drizzlers, Grillers, Steel Eels, it goes through and damages all of them. Your shots are similar to a sloshing machine except they travel in a straight line for a while and then just fall to the ground at the very end. Your direct hits will deal 360 damage in a line to everything it hits, and your swirling AoE around the shot deals 150 damage to any bystanders. Its weakness is definitely that it's a heavy and sluggish weapon, but more importantly, it's so ink hungry you can only shoot 4 times before it runs out of ink, so you'll have to make those shots count or you will find yourself in some trouble. As you can see from the footage, this weapon is just a monster, and you really shouldn't miss playing it, if only for a few minutes at least. It's a perfect Salmon Run Christmas present and will be a lot of fun. But of course, on the day of this rotation I will make a quick guide and a refresher on how to use the Grizzco Slosher, so keep an eye out for that. But that is it for this week's rotation. All of them seem super fun, and whichever badges you are still missing, I personally recommend climbing with all of them as these are all fantastic weapon combinations and is a symbolic Frosty Fest for Salmon Run for sure. You know the drill. If you have any further tips for any of the weapons or shifts, leave them in the comments below, and if you have any questions also let us know so we can help. I'm currently working on a huge revamp and redesign for the whole channel, so expect some really awesome visuals and changes in the near future. I can't wait to show them all, but overall Salmon Report will also show a lot more information and infographics for all rotations. For now, thank you for watching everyone, and if we won't meet, happy holidays and enjoy your time.